Hey artists, welcome back to the sculpture. This time I'm doing something completely different. I've never done anything like this before. I am doing a Battlefield 5 soldier. I have been very much been playing this game way too much and I should do more sculpture, but I decided to kill two birds with one stone. There is a YouTuber that I really like and I watch him play this game named Jack Frags. And in a way, this is a tribute to him because he's so good. And I'm starting out with J-Mac. So I'm going to take this knife, I'm going to cut the neck. And the reason I want to cut that, I want to be able to turn it. And I also want to be able to remove the head completely because I want to mold the head separately. I'm not going to, I am very new at mold making. So if I do make a mold of this, I think it would remove a lot of the difficulty for me. So that's the reason. That's the sternocleidomastoid, the ear. You can see it's got all the structure of the head, but I am not happy at all with the style yet. The helmet, it's still like a British style helmet. Not happy with it. He's got a gun in the front. Now I'm cutting a little bit of the armature. The armature was for a larger figure. And this is just aluminum wire. Remember, this oil-based clay, you cannot fire it, so you would have to make some mold of this to cast it in some material. It's more expensive, but I think this would look kind of cool in somebody's house. So, and by somebody's house, I mean me. I have all of this stuff all over my house. Another project I have coming up that I'm kind of toying around is doing like a samurai in this style, same size. That shape is just a pouch, and I don't know what a soldier would keep in there, maybe like some grenades or frag grenades or some kind, maybe a radio. He's going to have like a tool belt of some kind. If you play the game, there's like a lot of weapons that all of these soldiers seem to carry. The cloth, the best thing about doing something like this is that there's so many moving parts. The drapery of the pants, the drapery, how a jacket behaves in the human body. It's very difficult. It helps to have a mannequin and draping the mannequin with that, but unfortunately I do not have any of that, so I'm going to have to eyeball it and use reference. Now, I've been just using Google Images for this, of course, and this is the leg, and he's going to have another little pouch in the leg with a strap going around the gastrocnemius muscle, which is the lower leg muscle. All of this is going to be changing because I'm not going to be happy. I know it. Some more details of the feet. I like the serrated tools because it wipes out a lot of the geometry and it keeps things really simple for me. And also stay tuned, I'm going to be doing a video on how to create some of these wire tools. These wire tools have come in handy, especially the brass ones. I've found that the tools that you get from sculpture houses, they tend to break and corrode. So if you use brass, it tends to hold up much more. But when you combine it with water-based clay, things tend to rust, especially if you use any metals. It helps to have a little knife like this, and like a little X-Acto, because you can cut into the clay and make sharp edges. The cool thing about the JMAC clay is that it behaves very similar to water clay. It's the closest thing I've found, but the problem is it doesn't get harder. So if you want to do details towards the end, you're kind of struggling. And also it's a little bit chalky. That is, if you see my wire tool and I'm scraping, it leaves a little residue, and I don't like the residue. One of the accessories that you have in the game is the ability to melee, or melee, whatever, is that when you attack with a weapon, and this soldier is going to have an axe in the back. But the first thing you really need to do is concentrate on the jacket. Later on, I'm going to remove that accessory because I want to add more clay and build out the back. What I'm doing here with the sticks, these sticks are really handy to have and I use them so much. And I am counting heads. Now this is a little bit different. Most adult humans are going to be 7.5 heads tall. But ideally, people would make 8 heads on a male figure. So I cut one of the sticks and I put in the heads, and then I can figure out the proportions. The midway, of course, would be about 4 heads, so it's right about the pubic symphysis, and you can look it up on an anatomical chart so you can tell. But I am struggling quite a bit with the legs, and at this point I'm trying to extend the figure a little bit. So I'm going to be cutting the legs and extending them. Normally you want to do this right off the bat, but I kind of rushed into the sculpture. And here I am cutting the wire of the armature and bending the wire in because I just want it to kind of hang in there. And also, when I create a mold for this, I want the ability of removing the legs, the torso, the head, and the gun. because that's going to give me the opportunity to mold these things separately. And the reason I want to mold it separately is because I'm not very good at making these elaborate two-piece molds. So if I can make it a little bit easier, that's what I'm going to do. And I also don't like the stiffness of the leg. So eventually I plan on adding some action to the figure. So I'm going to cut the leg, the wire. This does ruin the armature, but you can just get some soft aluminum wire and redo it. So I'm adding about an inch or so to the figure. So I was a little bit off with the initial proportions, and I'm still adding the JMac clay. And it's a little bit harder. I mixed in some wax, so right now it looks like kind of like he's strutting. I don't want that look, so I think I might have him do a contrapposto. And often I'll do mistakes, like I sculpted the legs quite a bit. I spent too much time, and then eventually I realized that I didn't like it, and I destroyed it all, and I started again. I tend to do this pretty often. The idea is that you really shouldn't go back on your work, but I'm always correcting myself over and over. And often I keep thinking maybe position should be a little bit stiffer, or perhaps you should be taking a step or moving forward. And I am adjusting the arm. I'm putting in this wooden stick. Well, actually, it's one of my sculpture tools, because I want to see how potentially the gun is going to look, the rifle. And now I'm going to be adding some clay on this wire, and that's how he's going to be holding the gun. This soldier is like the engineering class of the Battlefield 5. So what that means is that they generally carry larger guns. So here I am just sculpting a little bit of the face, and surprisingly I'm going to be redoing the face over and over just because I don't like it. And I kind of have the vision of having a thinner or more muscular type of face. I don't want it to be too flabby, and I like all the geometry. I like seeing the flat shapes. So at this point, I'm doing the eyes, but I don't really like it. This tool is really good. It's like a dental round tool. You can get these on eBay, and they really help like pushing in corners, but I tend to use the flatter tools. I like the way it works a lot better. So here's another mistake that I did. I didn't like the helmet. I didn't like the British style helmet. So what I'm going to be doing is cutting it, shaving off the head, and making a new helmet. Now, your anatomy should be okay before you had a helmet. And I did sculpt this head a little bit. And it looks like from another video game, the Hitman, or Hitman I should say. Another game I've been obsessed with over a few years back. So this helmet that I'm creating now is the American styled World War II type of helmet. And I didn't realize it, but sculpting helmets is very difficult, because if you get the shape even a little bit off, it's going to look like something completely different. And it does take quite a bit of time to get the shape of helmets right. One thing in the past that I've seen is that people have sculpted helmets and it looks like the head doesn't fit properly in there. So I am trying to avoid that. I want to make sure that there's a skull underneath. I was thinking about making the helmet removable so I could mold it separately, but I don't think that's going to be needed, because this particular head I'm going to be able to remove, as you can see in the line on the neck, because I want to be able to mold it separately. At this point, I switched to monster clay, and I have a box of monster clay. Just, I think it comes in smaller sections, but this is a hard, and I do like the hard for doing these more detailed sci-fi sort of sculptures. Water clay is definitely my favorite because you can do everything that monster clay can and then some, and it looks painterly. It does feel like you're painting with clay. The JMac is a close second. The monster clay is very different. It's a wax-based oil clay, and it doesn't leave any residue on your fingers like the JMac. So it keeps things nice and clean, but I also feel that, as one of the YouTube subscribers mentioned, it does make sculptures look robotic. And in a way, that's the problem with oil-based clay, is that it makes things look robotic. And it's hard to get away from that, because every time you touch the clay, it's forced in such a way that it always looks a little bit artificial. It's like watching a movie shot in a digital format as opposed to film. The film has got that grain to it. There's like a certain pizzazz. It gives it a little bit of magic. The oil clay, I feel it's lacking. And a lot of it is due to the very hard style of the clay. So I'm trying to avoid that. In a way, with the accessories, I want it to be a little bit more playful. I don't want it to be like an action figure. I want it to be loose. I want the details to be more concentrated on the head and the important parts that I want to emphasize in the sculpture. And I want it to drift out. I don't want too much detail on maybe like the jacket, but I might change things. At this point, I'm changing the way the hand is, because I decided I'm going to have a bigger gun on them. That's one thing I do when I'm playing Battlefield 5. I try to use the biggest gun possible that's got the most rounds, because I'm so bad at the game. And I want to be able to just have probably like an M42. I haven't decided yet. There's so many cool guns in the game. So for me, I like the large guns. I'm terrible in any other part of the game. I get killed quite often. So my answer to that is just blast away like crazy. This tool that I'm using, you can see the way I'm like handling the clay. It's very difficult because it's so hard. And that's the problem with the oil clay. If this was water-based clay, you could just caress it into the style that you wanted. But I do like the cleanliness of oil-based clay. One of the problems, if you sculpt a lot and you use water-based clay, the particles of the clay, you could be like breathing them. It's never the case for me because I don't sculpt at such large format that I need it. At this point, I'm trying to figure out how I am going to be putting the feet. I want to be able to give the person some movement. So I decided to just do almost a contrapposto, but I want him to take a stance, like he's holding a gun with some weight. It needs to reflect that. But this is just the first video on this series of Battlefield 5. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is quite difficult. Even if you look at my armature, that's something I welded into the base because the last armature was kind of like falling down, so I had to like figure it out. But stay tuned for more videos, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.